Hello and welcome to the 20th episode of the Sockmatician podcast. I am the Sockmatician, also known as Nathan Taylor. You can find me as Sockmatician on Ravelry, Instagram, Twitter, and right here on YouTube. Welcome. It's the 5th of April today. It's a glorious sunny day outside. I have, after the problems I had last episode with lighting, when I had Abby sitting right here and our faces were flaring, I've endeavoured to rig up some blinders. I've got a black towel over one of the four windows that are streaming light into this living room, but I'm certainly not going to complain about that. It's a beautiful spring light day with blue skies and gorgeous sunny weather, and April has finally brought spring with it, it would appear, and not a moment too soon. I don't deal very well with the cold. I don't like being cold. Possibly that's why I'm a knitter. The only thing I am not liking about the onset of spring, and actually this is the first time I've ever thought this, I'm mourning the fact that it's getting too warm to wear my knitted clothes, although I am wearing some knitted socks today. Hooray! And I'm sure if I leave the house there'll still be a cowl or a scarf to accompany me. So yeah, the towel's not doing its job. What you may not know is this entire wall behind me is 4 massive great big glass panels. The view from our living room here is wonderful. We just have trees over there because there's a main road which I'm sure you can hear the traffic from all the time on this podcast, and sirens and horns and things. Right outside is the A1. It leads from London right up to Edinburgh. It's a very, very major trunk route for those of you who are not UK domicile and don't know these things. But directly across from us, there's no houses at all. There's just trees, and down below is the Highgate tube station, or one exit from it anyway. And I can see through the trees during the winter all the way across to Alexandra Palace on the horizon, which is where Ben and I got married just over 2 years ago. In fact, we celebrated our 2nd wedding anniversary last week, and genuinely, I cannot believe it's been 2 years. I think for most people, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only ever had my kind of wedding, which I know is a little bit unusual, but I think for most people, their weddings, for everybody else, tend to go away a little bit fairly soon afterwards. After you come back from the honeymoon, you go back to work, you fit back into life, and people go to other weddings and people go to other parties and crack on with their lives. And for you, of course, the memory is always going to be fresh and fabulous, but for everybody else, it becomes yesterday's news. And I don't mean that in any way to diminish what people's weddings are, because they are a fabulously huge day in anyone's life. Mine and Ben's wedding, because we did it on the television, you've heard me bang on about this one before, but I think it never went away because it made such a splash in terms of media attention and the award ceremonies and the awards that we won for the film about our wedding, or of our wedding. I think that lasted so long. In fact, this award here, you can see the Rose d'Or Award, we won that last November, and that was 18 months after the wedding took place. So our wedding has never really gone away, is what I'm saying. And so when I realised that we were just about to celebrate our 2nd wedding anniversary, it's like, good Lord. Particularly as we've been together for nearly 14 years, and 2 years, it seems odd to start counting again. Most people only say, oh, how long have you been married? Well, actually, that's only a small fraction of our relationship. Anyway, I digress. How are you? Have you been enjoying spring? Are you changing your knitting habits? For those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, this is a question for. Are you changing your knitting habits as the weather warms up? Are you finding yourselves knitting lighter things in lace weight and lacy things rather than sort of heavy, chunky, fabulously warm, wonderful, cosy, comfortable knits? I don't think I am. More about that in a moment. I don't think I'm doing that, but I think my mindset is definitely changing for that. I am thinking about lighter things, and I'm actually thinking about concentrating for a while on sort of smaller projects, smaller knits, and I think there's a lot of things going on for that. I want to discuss all of that later. I don't want to get into that now because there's so much I want to say about that. But it's going to be really interesting to see. My designer brain, not necessarily my knitter brain, but my designer brain is working in slightly different ways at the moment, and I've been trying to evaluate what's brought that on, why that might be, and I'm not sure I have the answers, but I'm enjoying being fascinated by my own processes. That sounds terribly navel-gazing and really narcissistic, and I absolutely don't mean it to sound like that. But it is true. I've always been the kind of person, I monitor myself all the time. Absolutely monitor everything I'm doing. It's almost like there's a Nathan stepping outside this Nathan to watch this Nathan to see what he's getting up to, and to sort of try and work out why he does it. And I think it's been very helpful to me at sort of darker periods of my life when things have been hard emotionally or stress-wise, and to be able to sort of stand outside and go, you know what, you're doing okay. That sounds very, very deep and meaningful for 6 minutes into a podcast episode. I'm going to get off this subject straight away and crack on. So how have you been is most important. I want to know. So if you haven't yet joined the Sockmatician Ravelry group, please do so. It's growing from strength to strength, and I am really, really loving the level of engagement that's happening in there. It's really, really good. One of the first things I do every morning, often while I'm still lying in bed, just after the alarm's gone off, I get my phone and I'll check my the forum in my Ravelry group. And I really love it when there's messages in there. So whether it's something specific, whether it's something just in the general chatter thread, if you just want to say hello, good morning, please pop over there. I do try to answer as many people as I can and chat to each other. It's not just about me and you, it's about you and her and him and them, and all getting together. That's what I really, really love about the way my Ravelry group is evolving and developing. I've got a frog in my throat today. And so yes, do that. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel here on YouTube if you don't want to miss out on what's happening in the Sockmatician world. I also have a newsletter. Now, I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast before. I take a liberty, and I'm sure most people don't mind, although I know some people do, but I'm going to do it anyway. I take the liberty, whenever anybody purchases one of my patterns on Ravelry, I get notified by an email from PayPal, and I also get an email from Ravelry as well. And so I have contact details, certainly email and name details of everyone who's ever bought a pattern from me. One of the things I do as my daily Knitterly admin is to add those email addresses to my mailing list. Now I'm very, very aware that some people are not signed up for a newsletter and don't wish to be part of it, and that's okay, and there's always an unsubscribe link in the emails that I send out. Thankfully, my unsubscribe rate is quite small. Now, I think that might be because I do try to buy the loyalty of my subscribers. Listen, if you sign up to one of my newsletters, you don't get bombarded with this is what this is for. I tell you what's going on my daily knitting life here in person on screen. That's not what my newsletter is all about. Neither is it about sharing the tiny little moments and nuggets of things. That's what Instagram is for, or Twitter. So I have various different outlets for different things. My newsletter is for me as a designer. Whenever I release a new pattern, I will send out a newsletter with photographs and information about it and links to where you can download it. And crucially, in order to buy the loyalty of my subscribers, I tend to offer exclusive discounts. I think that might be why people are quite happy to stay signed up. I don't know. It's incredibly manipulative. I'm totally aware of that. It's business, okay? Sue me. So that is what I do. And I've recently, I've changed the process through which I send my newsletters. So if some of you are already subscribers, and I'm sure many of you are if you've already bought patterns from me, then you'll probably have noticed that the last one that went out last week sometime is through a completely different provider. I've always done it through my own website. I have I used to be a web designer, and I have set up my own system for sending out bulk mails. Now, of course, bulk mailing can be very, very tricky. It can be illegal if it's spam. You have to be very, very careful. You can't just send out the same thing to thousands of people and not expect to get stopped from doing it. So there are specific processes through which you can send out large quantity newsletters. And I'm not talking large quantities. At the moment, I have well under 1,000 subscribers on my news list. But it's still a useful pool of people to send information out to. So I used to do it through my Sockmatician.com website. But the more again, this is all about evolvement and development. I'm saying the same words again. The more I evolve as a designer, and the more my engagement groups also evolve, the more I'm realizing that I'm not using the website. I'm not going to keep it up to date anymore. I'm just going to use it as a platform, basically for different levels of contact. So there'll be links to my Instagram, Twitter, Ravelry, and YouTube feeds on there, and a way of signing up to the newsletter, quite crucially. So if you've signed up, you definitely want to be on it, I would assume. And I was doing it through that. Now, one of the reasons I stopped was because my domain name provider will only allow me to send a certain number of emails per hour, and I'd already surpassed that with the number of subscribers I had since the last time I sent one. So I was looking around for a new way of doing it, and I just went straight to MailChimp. MailChimp are brilliant. Learned how to set up an account, how to format a template, got going with it. Boom, there it is. I said boom. Boom. And there it was. And my first newsletter went out last week, which was letting people know, and I may as well do that now, that the pattern for Piano number 2, the scarf based on the space filling curve by Giuseppe Piano, is available now. And you can, do you know what? You all know this. You can buy it from my Ravelry store. There was an exclusive newsletter discount which has now sadly expired, so I'm not that's the reason why I'm sort of doing this now, is so that it can't be seen as a tragic attempt to get you all to rush across, subscribe and buy my pattern. It's not that at all. I'm just sort of telling you about what I've been doing. So this scarf, which I know you've all seen before, but I really love it. I love how bright and vibrant it is. The green is Deeply Wicked Key Lime from John Dunballum in the, it's 100% merino, or is it 80-20? Can't remember off the top of my head, but it's brilliant. It's lovely to work with, and the black is Malabrigo Sock, which is 100% merino. It's one of the longest scarves in the world. I can just bury myself in it and enjoy it 100%. And I actually think it goes rather well with my purple jeans, don't you think? So that's now available, and that was the catalyst for me moving over to MailChimp. I think MailChimp's going to be a lot more flexible for me and enable me to, interestingly, have access to a lot more statistics about who's opening the emails, who's clicking on the links within them, what links they are clicking onto, and I'm hoping that will help me to structure the content that I send out to make it more effective for me, but more interesting for you, which will therefore become more effective for me. Many of you will remember that I took part in the very first non-domestic round of their quiz show, Knit or Forfeit, on their podcast. And I was really, really glad when Dan and I, on our head-to-head, we drew, which meant that we both ended up doing our forfeits, one of which is Aloysius here. He was no forfeit at all. Look at him, he's adorable. The other was knitting with some dreadful acrylic yarn that Dan had sent me, which is looking rather fetching, as Aloysius's jumper here. And my forfeit to Dan was more of a challenge. I know he's a fairly recent knitter, it's only a couple of years, and I know that he's also looking at pushing himself out of his comfort zone. So I challenged him to learn double knitting. Well, since we last spoke, you and I, Dan and I have been FaceTiming each other, and I've been giving him one-on-one tuition. Now, I'm not going to give too much away because I know he's video diarying it and putting it on their own patrons-only podcast, and I don't want to tread on his toes doing that, but he's brilliant. Now, bear in mind, this is somebody who has never done any colour work before, has sort of never worked with more than one yarn at a time, has never really focused on advanced techniques yet. He's got the kind of brain that works like mine. I think it's something, without wanting to gender stereotype, I think it's an attribute that gets considered as a male brain attribute, which is the kind of almost autistically focused on details that I and certain types of men like me tend to fall into. Women will do it as well, of course. Please don't write in. And he really wants to get good at this. I know he's enjoying it. And he flew with the technique, bearing in mind that I wasn't in the room with him. I couldn't actually. Sometimes I'd like to put my hands on people when I'm teaching them how to do double knitting, so they can feel the mechanics of what their hands are doing underneath mine. Of course, I couldn't do that with him. He's in the north of England, and I'm down in the south. So I sort of went behind the camera at one point to give him a kind of knitter's eye view of what I was doing behind the camera, the way I do my video tutorials. Some of which he'd seen, and I'd given him homework for cast on, which he managed brilliantly well. They jokingly said on their podcast recently that I'd said to Dan, if you struggle with this, I'm sure Kay will be able to help you out. And she looked at the camera and went, I hadn't got a clue what you're talking about. So what's lovely about this is it's giving Dan something that he can do that Kay can't yet. So, because obviously she's the expert knitter in their family, and Dan is playing catch up. Well, this time I've given Dan something to be able to become advanced in before Kay has done, and I think he's quite enjoying that as well. So he's really flying with that. It's been so lovely. I do enjoy teaching double knitting. What I've realised, I really enjoy doing it on a one-to-one. I love teaching groups, don't get me wrong, but when I was teaching well, not teaching, she already knew, but when I was helping to coach Julie, Double 66, in Edinburgh, I had so much fun because I knew she was enjoying it. And I think that I was just enjoying sharing. Again, one of the reasons for the podcast, and the reason I do all the tutorials, is I want to be able to give back. I want more people to be able to double knit. I want everybody to know that it's not just an advanced thing for really, really top-notch knitters. It's really not. If you can knit and you can purl, you can do it. This pattern, piano number 2, and all of my more recent double knitting patterns, pretty much, I might actually go back and update all the others, but most of the double knitting patterns that I put out are aimed at people who can double knit already, but they're also aimed at people who've never done it before. There are full instructions and tutorials and step-by-steps and photo tutorials, on links to video tutorials on all of the different techniques you would need in order to do it, even if you've never done it before. When I met Minxie, hello Minxie, again in Edinburgh, she'd never done double knitting before, but she, through my pattern, knitted the Remember cowl, the black and red one with the poppies on it. And that's got some really unusual techniques in it. It's got bobbles, it's got reverse stocking stitch patches, and the colour changes, and the starting and the finishing. So there's loads of stuff in there, and she'd never done any of it before in double knitting. And I was so proud of her for being able to do it. And that's why, excuse me, I've got something stuck to my lip. That's why I do the patterns the way I do. I don't want to assume any level of knowledge, so I try to make sure that they're as comprehensive as I can. That said, if you're brilliant at all of this, you can skim down to where it says pattern and print off the last 2 or 3 pages and whatever charts I'm using. So there's something in there for everybody. And I really enjoyed teaching Dan, I really enjoyed teaching Julie. And since Edinburgh, and since last time I podcasted, I'm in talks now with 3 different groups of people, all of whom want me to start teaching some classes, which is going to be really, really exciting. I can't give any details out at the moment, but I will on this podcast as soon as I can. One I can say for sure is in July, date yet to be confirmed, but in July this year I'm going to be teaching an all-day workshop on demystifying double knitting at Loop, which is London's premier yarn shop. It's the one that everybody knows, surely everyone knows Loop. It's in Angel, which is not too far away from where I live, and it's going to be probably a Sunday, and it'll be an all-day session, so like 2 hours and 3 hours with lunch in between, something like that. And it's really a chance for me to demystify the art of double knitting and make people realise that it's not as difficult as you think. That is my main tenet. It is, of course, my fellow OSATers, only one stitch at a time. You know this. Get doing it. So, okay, I want to crack on then with some podcastly stuff. So after last time I podcasted, I keep saying last week, it wasn't last week, it was the week before, when I had the lovely Abby here. Now, I have to say, Abby and her cats, but Abby particularly, is a bit of a hit. I think a lot of people have made some lovely comments about Abby being on the episode, so I think I'd love her to come back, and I'd love her to chat to you some more, but I might have some other guests at some point joining me here on the sofa if I can set that up. I'd really love to go international as well and have some kind of two-way conversations with people who are not necessarily here in the room, not even necessarily here in the country. So watch this space. I'm looking to sort of spread my boundaries as a podcaster as well. You may have noticed that I no longer do the two-camera stuff. It was a good experiment and I really enjoyed it, but it was far too much editing and it took forever, and my podcast episodes are long enough already without having to edit them for 10 hours. Like, I didn't enjoy doing it, so I stopped. My podcast, my rules. So, going back to, I've got some podcast questions on my group on Ravelry, and there is a thread there, it's a sticky thread, so it's always going to be at the top. If you have anything you want to ask me, that you want me to talk about here on the podcast, then please do, I'm happy to do so. I love it when there's questions to ask. So here we are. Very quick one. Oh, actually, this was posted a long time ago. I may have even answered it already. Nathan, thanks for such a wonderful, entertaining podcast. I have no idea which one you mean. This is from Bubby's mom 77, I should say, who is... I should have planned this, shouldn't I? Who is Christina from Sacramento in California. Do I have any plan? Oh, she's planning to take on double knitting in 2016, so maybe this is timely. Do I plan to write up the pattern for the scarf that I made for Christmas for my niece, because she absolutely loves it? Yes, I do. And one of the things I've been doing this week, in fact I had a couple of days, yesterday and today, I've had some time to just really get up to date with all my knitting admin. And yesterday I took time doing a photo tutorial for my one pass 2-colour brioche method. Now that's for not only the wren scarf, which I knitted for my niece Jenny, the scarf, which I knitted, which you're talking about, which is for those of you who don't remember, oh, there's a photograph of it here, it's this one with the skulls and the wavy panel of brioche down the middle. That's for my niece Becky. That's double knitting and brioche combined, whereas Jenny's wren scarf is brioche cables, all done with the one pass method. And then also my scarf for Lewis. So all there isn't a combined word for nieces and nephews, so people have tried to come up with one, and the best they've come up with is nibblings. I'm not sure I like it. It's like siblings, but with niece and nephew added in. I'm not sure it'll stick. Well, I've used it for my nibblings. So Lewis's scarf as well, which is pure brioche, but it's got some colour changes in it, like double knitting, and I do the edges in it with slip stitch edging, just like I do my double knitting. Again, trying to mix and match my two passions and combine as much as possible, because I really believe that 2-colour brioche is a form of double knitting. It's double knitting with tuck stitches, and I'm going to talk more about tuck stitches in a minute. Yeah, baby! I get excited. This is really fun. I've got so much to say. I've been really, really happy doing my knitting stuff recently. Can you tell I'm a little bit more relaxed than I have been of late? I'm having more time to sit back and get on with the finer things in life, including fibercraft. So yes, I spent most of yesterday doing these photo tutorials and writing up the pattern for, which I don't have to hand, or do I? Writing up the pattern for the wren scarf, which I'm sure is, so it's looking, so the pattern is coming, there's photographs coming up, Jenny wearing the scarf, There's it's hard to see because it's flaring in the light here. Can you see that? Yeah, there we go. So here we are. I'm working on photo tutorials. Quite extensive photo tutorials, you'll notice. It goes on for quite a long time. That's because there's a lot of different techniques involved, many of which will be new to people. So I want to make sure that everyone has everything they need right there in the pattern. That's my method, my tenet, in fact. So that's the first stage. Excuse me. That's the first stage. I've got a little bit of phlegm today. Mr. Tickle will sort that out. And the next stage is I can use those same tutorials. I can put those into the other 2 patterns in the series. So I've got my 3 scarves ready to come out. That Jenny scarf, the Wren scarf, it's called the Wren scarf because Jenny's always been Jenny Wren. And ever since she was a tiny baby, she's always been known in the family as Jenny Wren. So the scarf is the Wren, and she's modelling it in the pictures. And that one's ready to go. I'm actually going to get that one properly tech edited and send it away to the fabulous Michelle Hazel. She doesn't know this yet, so if you're watching, Michelle, it's coming your way because she does a brilliant job. And because there's so much explanation of what needs to be done, I want to make sure it's not A, off-putting, B, overwhelming, C, inaccurate, so it makes sense to someone who's never done it before, and she'll be the person to tell me. So that may take a wee while to get that sorted, and then it'll be ready to go. And then once I've got that, then it'll be quite simple to get the others written up. So yes, Christina, the answer is yes, I am going to be doing it, and it will be coming to a Ravelry store near you soon. Moving on. Oh, here's an interesting one. This is from Kayla2, who is it doesn't say where you are, Kayla. I have no information about you at all, but Kayla2 says, I'm kind of new to double knitting and I wanted to do a simple hat for my husband who works outside in Canada. Aha, that's where you are. Wanting to know if there's a way to do ribbing in double knitting, or should I do the ribbing separate? He likes the simple hats I do, but needs a thicker hat, which is why I thought of double knitting. Thanks for any help. Well, yes. Yes, there's lots of ways. There's no real quick, easy way to answer your question. You could always rib separately and then double your stitches, adding the second colour, and then knit the body of the hat as you go along, which might be fun because then if you knit a long enough ribbed brim, you can always fold that up, so that's going to be doubled anyway, and then the main body of the hat will be double knitting on top of that. Double knitting is, of course, perfect for the cold for lots of different reasons. Yes, clearly it's double the thickness, but there's a brilliant thing about it. You could just knit a hat with chunkier yarn. Well, a chunkier hat would probably have chunkier holes in it, so you get the double thickness without those bigger holes. Add to that the fact that the stitches in double knitting don't actually line up flat on like that. They're actually offset by half a stitch. So, excuse me, there's a little belch for you there. Marvellous. You have, oh, gross. So you have actually, wherever there's holes on one side, you've got something plugging the gaps on the other. So it makes for really, really good kind of windproofing. It's harder to see through double knitting, even if you sort of pull it out and stretch it, you can see through it a little bit, but not as much as you would through single phase knitting, and it's for that reason, because of the offset of the stitches by half a stitch. Technique all the way, kids. I'm right here for you. So yeah, you can do that. You can rib in double knitting. Double knitting rib is a different beast from normal ribbing. It's not the same because, if you're using 2 colours on the same side, then you end up with something akin to corrugated rib in stranded knitting, which doesn't respond like ribbing at all. It doesn't stretch the same way. It doesn't have the same sort of, wiggles as you look down the side, the ins and outs of the pearls and the knits, because the 2 colours react with each other or interact with each other in a different way. There are many ways you can do it. You can do it so it's double knitting, so it's like 1 colour on one side and 1 colour on the other side, and if you have, you'd need to be able to do some reverse stocking stitch double knitting. So if you were to bring those into line and do 2 pairs of stocking stitch and 2 pairs of reverse stocking stitch, what you'd have working along the layers is knits and pearls and knits and pearls and knits and pearls and knits and pearls. As I get closer, as you look at the edge of it, it would be knits and pearls and knits and pearls and knits and pearls. That's one way of doing it. You could get them to track. So instead of doing each pair as a knit and a pearl, or a pearl and a knit, you could do the first 2 pairs as knit, 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 and then pearl, 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 pearl for the fronts and the backs, and then you would get the 2 sides of the fabric with their ins and outs tracking each other that way. So you'd have the knits would go that way and the pearls would go that way, and the knits would go that way and the pearls would go that way as you look along the edge. There are brilliant tutorials already out on the internet, photo tutorials with exactly that. So if you just put ribbing in double knitting in, there's one particular that I'm thinking of. I'll try and track down the link and put it up here, as if by magic. And that'll tell you everything you need to know. So there's lots of options for you. You can go 1 colour on either side, 2 colours on each side, or just single face ribbing and then double up later on. It's all out there for you. And yes, I think a double knitted hat, particularly with something really fabulous in it, like maybe alpaca, or maybe some, I don't know, some really warm cashmere fibres would be amazing in Canadian winters. Here's one from MCS1157, who has a picture of a Muppet pig. I'm wondering if that's anything to do with the Bakery Bears. Who is Mary from Florida. Hello Mary, hi. You've said, can fair isle patterns be used for a double knitting project? I knit a lot for children and thought being reversible would be fun, plus no floats to get caught on. Maybe try a Christmas stocking to see how it goes. Well, yes, you can. The only thing to be aware of is that for many people, by all means not all, but for many people, the gauge in double knitting is a different shape from their gauge in stranded knitting. Stranded knitting. Stranded knitting gauge tends to be pretty much square, so your stitch gauge and your row count and stitch count will be the same over the same distance. Some people in double knitting find that their stitches are wider than they are tall, so they'll have fewer stitches per inch than they will have rows per inch, more rows per inch than stitches. And just had to bite that off my lip. I had a little bit of grossness and just skin. It was causing me problems, and you don't need to know any of this. And this is no edit podcasting. Yay! You're all used to me by now. You know what the game is. I'm gross. I own it. Who cares? Where was I? Golly, I was talking about the gauge in double knitting. Now, interestingly, people like Alistair Post Quinn, who literally wrote the book on double knitting, he maintains that his gauge for double knitting is the same as his gauge for any other type of knitting. And oddly, Dan Jones was finding that his gauge was also pretty darn square. Interestingly, Dan and Alistair execute their double knitting in very similar fashions. I think there might be a link. There's lots of reasons why people have put forward for why this may be the case. Sometimes because of the yarns going backwards and forwards between every stitch that's using, there's a little bit of there's a bit more yarn travelling through. Also, when your knit stitches are on one needle, they're all lined up next to each other, but when they're on a double knitting needle, there's other stitches in between, which spreads them out a little bit, which I think has a lot to do with it as well. So you can absolutely do it, and many people have with great effect. You will probably find, although not necessarily, you will probably find that if a pattern is meant to be square, it will end up being a little bit squished. So circles will become ovoid, and squares will become rectangular, and faces might become a little shorter and fatter, things like that. So it can be done. You might want to adapt to add a couple of rows in if it's a simple geometric pattern to make it square, if that's what really matters to you. But swatch, see how you get on. My Sanka scarf is all based on squares, and they're not square, and I really don't care. my gauge tends to be about 7 rows to 5 stitches, or maybe 5 rows to 4 stitches, something like that, somewhere between the two. But you may find that you're one of those squaries, which would be brilliant. So yes, it can be done, and I'd be interested to see what you come up with. And finally, I have a question from, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Vista Knit. I'm not going to spell it, it's right there on screen. I caught myself, who I'm learning, who's Veronica. That would be the V. Vista Knit. Veronica, who's in Ontario in Canada. Very probing question, with a disclaimer that I don't need to answer it if I didn't feel comfortable. Well, I do. Hi Veronica. I have a question, she says. Clearly, if it's too personal, feel free to ignore it, and me altogether. How could I possibly ignore you? Considering the stress of last year, I wonder how you and Ben managed to live and work without going mildly insane. Seriously, it must be a skill you have somehow mastered. Well, I can tell you it's no skill and we haven't mastered it. Over the last 2 years, 2 and a bit years now, Ben and I have worked with each other on 2 projects. 1, our wedding, and 2, Beyond the Fence, the musical and documentary for Sky Arts. They've both been incredibly stressful, and they both put a big strain on our relationship. We're fine, don't worry, we're fine. But I think we're both incredibly strong-minded people, bullish, mulish, stubborn, and both incredibly passionate about what we do, and passionate about making what we do the best we can. And sometimes we have very different ideas about what is best for what we're doing, and that's wherein lies the problem. So there were many occasions during the writing stages of Beyond the Fence, and this was 4.5 months of writing, and it could be exhausting, where we disagreed. We disagreed on whether a certain aspect of the show was right or not, and it was difficult. It was really, really tricky. We rowed big time, and again, we're passionate people, and we row passionately, and I think ultimately we both know that those rows are not personal, that we know that those rows are about the work, and they are happening because we both want the work to be as good as it can be. Now, I think it's quite useful for the process, I really do. There are times when Ben has been, I'm saying it this way around because this is how I experience it, whereas Ben has been incredibly cruel to me and unpleasant to me about something that I have written. And it's made me angry, and it's made me go away, and it's made me go, oh, all right, then I'm gonna, language, my podcast, my rules, I'm going to write something better, I'll show you. And what happens is I write something better. It's like, oh, that kind of backfired on me. He was right. It wasn't good enough. There are other times when Ben hating something that I've done makes me examine it more closely than I might otherwise have done, and makes me realise, no, do you know what? I'm right. This is good. This is right. This is what it needs to be, and it makes me sure of that, rather than just going along with stuff because that's what came out of my head. So that's been very useful, and I know I've done the same to him in both directions. So I'm not saying that Ben is cruel to me all the time. I'm sometimes very cruel to him too. But again, it's only about the work. It's not cruel. It's about leaving ego to the side, and sometimes that's really hard as a creative. We exist almost entirely on ego. We have to. We have to have. I was saying to someone recently, I can't remember who I was talking about, but you can't do what we do, as it either write or perform, unless you believe you're brilliant at it. And there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, but I think if you don't believe that you're really good at what you do, you'd never have the balls to stand up in front of 2,000 people and open your mouth to sing. You just wouldn't do it. You have to know that you're good enough, and by being in that job, you're already, someone's told you you're good enough by giving you the opportunity to do it. So that all feeds into it. But then if you go out and read bad reviews about yourself, that can really crush all of those things. I've learned that lesson years ago. I don't go out reading reviews now. I didn't read reviews of our wedding unless I'd been told that here was a really good one. And it's always nice to hear nice things about yourself. I didn't go looking for reviews for Beyond the Fence either, because I know I need to protect the creative part of me that would be crushed by reading the bad stuff. That's not about I want a skewed opinion. I want to continue believing I'm good enough to be doing what I'm doing. That aside, the two of us both believe that we're good at what we do, and therefore we row about it. The other side of that is that we were working on this and living together and working from our home. We were together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the project never goes away. You don't get a chance to close a door at 5 o'clock and go home and talk to your partner about what a difficult person you're working with, because your partner is that difficult person you're working with. So that is tough. It really is genuinely very, very tough. And we were very stressed all the time and had no escape from it. And I think that didn't help with stress levels either. Whether we found a magic formula, I don't think we have. I think it's about coping with the problems as they present themselves to you in the moment. I hope that answers your question. So there we are, some questions. The other thing I want to talk about today is the giveaway. The giveaway of Woolly Cricket's fabulous vintage car bag, box bag. Here it is, with a lovely, lovely contrasting but coordinating, because it matches the cars in it, hand strap, which is brilliant wrist strap, and inside we have, I've shown you all this before, but we have the map of the world, vintage maps, giving travel and transport a theme throughout. Now you may remember, if you're new and haven't seen this podcast before, welcome, first of all, but you won't remember, so catch up for you. You may remember I said, I didn't want to, this is so nice, I didn't want to just give it away and do some random thing. So I asked people to do something specific, and that something was to, people who watch this all the time will know I'm endlessly fascinated by people's knitting techniques. In fact, I can't explain why. I could watch people knitting all day. I marvel at and revel in the different techniques, the ways people hold and tension the yarn, the way people move their hands, lefties, righties, mirrors, alternates, all sorts of things. Love it. Did I say I love it? I love it. And so I asked people to record a little video of themselves. This is quite a mammoth task. Record a little video of themselves knitting from any angle, chatting or not chatting, doesn't matter. I just wanted to see how they knit, how they tension the yarn, post it to YouTube and pop it in the thread. All those stages. Well, we've had loads and loads and loads of entries, about 20, which is way more than I was expecting, because I was asking people to jump through hoops, and I'm aware of that. Of all the videos posted in there, no two are alike. I was going through them this morning. I deliberately have left it until today. I haven't watched any of them. I loved it. I could sit and I could watch them all flipping day. It was literally just before I sat down to watch this, so they're all nice and fresh. And I just want to go through a few of them. So we have. I'm gonna go through one at a time. We've got Ellen, who's up in Cumbria, knits to stay sane. Ellen's video is really. I'm going to try and turn this down so you can't hear anything. Ellen's video is the first one in the thread, and the way she knits, she's wrapping her yarn through her fingers alternately. You can watch all of these. Do you know what? Probably not going to go through them all. And she's just knitting using. She's a bit of a thrower. What made me interested about Ellen's method of knitting is how it differs from mine, because I'm a right-handed knitter as well when I'm doing single-face knitting. I'm a flicker rather than a thrower, but I haven't got anything to show. What she's doing is she's holding her yarn underneath. This is really, really bad. I'm going to talk about this sock later on anyway. But what's happening there? I should have planned this a little better. is she's tensioning her yarn through her fingers, I know not how, and I hold my knitting from over the top of the needle. This is basically what I'm trying to say. I hold my knitting from over the top of my needle. She holds it like a pen going underneath. So it means that she has the movement. I've never really been able to do this. So she's not really letting go. She's just sort of moving the yarn backwards and forwards while her thumb is tucked under the knitting itself. I don't knit like that. It fascinates me. Thank you, Ellen, for sharing that. We have Mara at home, who is, I don't know where you are, Mara. I should probably find out. I'm wondering if you're Scottish. Let me just try and open the page now. Oh, you're not, you're Belgian. Hello, welcome to you from Belgium. So Mara at home, she knits on straights, and she has one of them clamped under her arm, and the other one doing the work. Almost like she's not in a belt, it's just sort of tucked under her arm. Brilliant, love it. Then we've got, who else have we got? Then we've got Sarah in Houston, who has offered 2 videos. It's only 1 entry, I'm afraid, Sarah, but I really enjoyed watching both of your videos. How I double knit and how I knit. Now, how she double knits is kind of fun. Sarah in Houston's the name, not just Sarah in Houston. She's an English flicker like I am, but she holds both of her yarns in her right hand over the same finger and carries them backwards and forwards, purling and knitting with one or the other. Fascinating. When she's knitting, however, when she's not doing double knitting, I can't quite see how she's tensioning her yarn, but the knitting looks, do you know what? It looks exactly the way I knit. It looks exactly the way I knit. Do you know what? I'm going to go back. That worked rather well. Why didn't I, rather than trying to explain it all, why don't I just show everyone? This is Ellen in Cumbria. Oh, you can see yourselves in the reflection there. This is Ellen in Cumbria tensioning her yarn, and off she goes. Very nice. This is Mara from Belgium. She's actually purling in this first lot. She does go on to knitting. Oh, hang on. I don't know why that stopped. Technology, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it fantastic? Here she is. So you can see that we've got one needle clamped under her, her left arm, and the right needle doing all the work. Very good. You didn't expect to see your little, I hope nobody minds. You've posted it on YouTube, it's got to be okay with a public face. Then, so here is Sarah in Houston doing her double knitting. Let me try and get this one started. So you can see here she is holding both yarns in around one finger. Oh, I think I might have said the wrong needle about Mara because I was looking at it on my phone, which is reversing everything. So there we are, that's going backwards and forwards, both yarns in one hand. And I've already shown you how she knits one at a time. We've got, now here's an interesting one. Endlessly fascinating combinations. We've got RNKAS, not sure how to pronounce that, who is, where are you? You're in America, I don't know where, and I don't know your name either, but RNKNS, you are a self-confessed mirror knitter. I don't know why that needs to be a confession. And let me read your post because it's quite fun. It says here, I'm a mirror knitter, mirror knitting right-handed thrower. So the lefty version of a left-handed thrower. So what my friend James was so weird, what I've never seen him do, this is taking that one step further and going in the opposite direction. And her mum, who taught her to knit, is a left-handed, non-mirror knitting thrower. brain, I can't cope. I love it. What's really interesting about this, well, let's just watch it and see. I'd like to ask you, and please pop me a message. I'd like to ask you, what is it about? Why you do it? I'm trying to get the reflections out of the way so you can see. There we go. Can you see? It's backwards to me in so many ways. It's kind of like, golly, I mean, most people who are mirror knitters would be kind of almost like continental, but in their right hand, whereas you are doing what appears to be all the most awkward things and making it not awkward at all. How do you deal with following patterns? Which, I mean, I guess you just do the same. You just, if it says knit purl, knit 10, purl 2, knit 10, then you just do it in your direction. I've never really thought about that before. But do you find you have issues with reading charts and things like that, or do you just have to go from the other side? Well, how do you do it? Share, please, share. So that's fascinating. I enjoyed that a lot. Here's Leanne in New Zealand, Kilts and Quilts, who made the lovely bag for the previous giveaway, and here she is knitting quite similar to Ellen, but tensioning the yarn a different way, using a different finger to flick the yarn across. Not quite sure how she's managing that. I think it's the middle finger that's doing that. That's all fun. Then we've got knitted towel. I should find out who knitted towel is. You are Jessamine from Austin, Texas. Unusual name, Jessamine. How lovely to have a Texan viewer here. Going back to your video, knitted towel, where are you? Sorry, technology and boring dead space on the podcast. I'm so dull. I'm such a terrible podcaster sometimes. This is interesting. This is the tension is again done. The flicking's done with, the throwing's done with a finger. I don't really understand how. Again, a completely different, unique way of doing it from all the other people who've shown videos so far. And this is Ekaterina. I don't know where you are, my love. Where are you? Let me find that out, because I like to know where people are watching from. You're from Nuremberg. I've been to Nuremberg. You said so many things about yourself that are completely not true. You said it sounds like you've never spoken English before. I think doing a video in a second language is an extraordinary thing, and you did brilliantly. But your video of how you knit, I'll try to find a bit that shows you doing it well. It's because you've got from lots of different angles here, and I quite enjoyed seeing all of that. So I'm just going. Here we go. Continental knitter. But interestingly, you wrap your yarn around your finger in a way that I've not seen before. It sort of goes the other way to how mine goes, because my left finger over here does continental when I'm doing double knitting. Fascinating there, I enjoyed that. And then we've got 3 Australian entries. I'm nearly through. I'm sorry if this is boring you, but this is fascinating to me. I'm going to go through them all because I really love it. We've got Kimber Mel, who is Kim from Melbourne. And what do we see about Kim here? She's throwing. She's tensioning around her little finger. I find that a fairly familiar style of knitting. And she's fast too, marvellous. It's not how I knit, because I don't throw like that. She was with 2 friends, and they all recorded videos of themselves knitting. So this is Rubylicious72, who's an English style. She says, "I just hold the yarn and the needle." So she's not a tensioner at all, and you can see she's just holding the yarn between thumb and finger, and wrapping it round as necessary to purl or to knit. Fabulous table. And then the third member of that party, was our first male knitter in the thread. Delighted to have you, David. This is Collie Wool, again from Melbourne, I would assume. And you're also what I call a wrapper and dropper, but you don't really drop the wool. You let go of the needle and wrap as necessary. Very interesting. Very nice cable work there as well. Then we've got, I've missed one out. Then we've got Joy Writer. Now what's going on with Joy Writer? I forget all the details. I'm enjoying seeing them as we go. So, oh, here we are. This is Joy's a continental knitter, and it's hard to see because she's going at lightning speed, but when she comes to a purl, which is sort of every fourth stitch, it looks very much to me like she's doing the Norwegian purl. I think Ekaterina does the Norwegian purl as well. Fast, crazy fast stuff. Then we've got Auntie Jo, who is from Canada, I believe. I think I read. I'm going to check on that. Auntie Jo is indeed, she's from Calgary. Auntie Jo, so this is Joanne from Calgary. Let me just find your, once again, where is it? Yeah, here it comes. Here we go. Again, holding on between thumb and finger, but with yarn tensioned around what looks like the middle finger and possibly another finger there. So similar kind of action, but different method of manipulating the yarn. This is Chanel from, I believe, California. And Chanel is, I'm just trying to I'm just trying to find a point where she's knitting, because she says hello at the beginning. Here it comes. Yeah, here she is. She's a finger flicker. It looks very much like my method of knitting. Let me just see that. Oh no, hang on. I'm watching it backwards. No, she's continental. I'm lying completely. It's like I've never done this before. So there she is, holding continental. Then we've got Julie that I met in Edinburgh. Hello, Julie. Hi. Who is now this? I love. I'm going to say this right from the beginning. This is how she gets into tensioning the yarn, because she goes up and down around her little finger, and then she uses her middle finger. Amazing. This is so brilliant. I love. This is the kind of one that boggles my mind. Here it comes. She's wrapping around, make a loop down around her little finger, but it's not her little finger that's flicking the yarn. It's either her middle finger or forefinger. It's hard to tell there, but the little finger's just keeping tension on it and keeping it out of the way. Love that. Then we've got Ferran Moreno from Spain, who is a right-handed knitter, and he says halfway from thrower to flicker. I went, oh, come on, you've got to be one or the other. No, he's right. So he's tensioning the yarn. A little bit like a finger flick, but there's definitely action going back down to hold the needle, which is something that flickers themselves don't actually do. But he's not completely throwing, because he doesn't let go of the needle as he wraps it round. There's definitely a flick going on. Fascinating stuff. Oh, Aloysius has timed out. So there you are. That's a little tour through the entries of that. I cannot tell you. I could watch this kind of thing all day. So I'm going to leave the thread open. I mean, the giveaway is done because I haven't announced it yet. But one of those people is going to be the lucky winner of this. But I want to keep that thread open, because I may sort of change the title, but I may change the opening thread just to say, because if anyone wants to, or I'll open another thread of how I knit videos, and I'll put them in there, and I'll link to them, because I think it's really, really interesting. I really enjoy watching, and some people have talked in their videos, some people have put music, some people haven't, some people have just stayed silent, some people have cut the sound completely. That's not what's important. What I've loved is seeing the different ways of doing it. Oh, and I didn't, there is another one I should have said. Oh no, there's two more. I'm so sorry. Before we go any further, let's look at Isabel, who is from France. Before people think, don't write in. Now this is Isabel doing some double knitting. And she holds her right hand yarn very, well, it's identical to the way I do, but her left hand yarn could not be more different. The way I double knit is fairly symmetrical, both fingers flicking, whereas the way Isabel's doing it, and she's also doing a Norwegian purl. Oh no, sorry, not a Norwegian purl, she's doing an alternate purl. So she's wrapping her purl yarn clockwise around the needle rather than anti-clockwise, and that has the effect of twisting the stitches, so she's having to work the knit stitches on the next row through the back loop to untwist them. And she's doing it nice and slowly to show us exactly what she's doing there, but she picks up with a rattling speed later on in the video. And finally, we have Judipa, who I have no idea where you are either. You're another Belgian one? You're another Belgian person? Oh no, Frankfurt, sorry. Same colours on the flag, just the stripes going the other way. From Frankfurt. I spent a long time in Frankfurt with various different shows. I enjoyed Frankfurt a lot. And your video is, you say there's nothing inspiring about it, but it's lots of fun. Hang on, let me get that. There we are on your DPNs. Now you are a windy roundy finger knitter, and my friend Julie is also a windy roundy finger knitter, but unlike her, you are sort of allowing your finger to get closer and closer and closer to your knitting as you use that yarn, and then you'll wrap again. My friend Julie looks like she's doing the same thing, but actually what she does is she winds her yarn around her finger 4 or 5 times, and as the finger gets too close the first time, she drops the first loop off the finger and springs it out again, gets closer and closer, drops the next loop off, and only when she's dropped all of them off does she rewind. Endless possibilities. I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed watching all of them. I did say this is not going to be a random thread judging thing. What I want to do is I don't want it to be the person who went to the most trouble or just the person who has the most unusual method of knitting. But there is somebody who speaks to me as a winner. And I sort of wish it didn't, but I'm going to go with my heart, and it is going to be RNKAS, your right-handed mirror knitting, lefty, right-handed throwaway stuff is so brilliantly bizarre and unusual that congratulations, you are the winner of Cricket's fabulous bag. So thank you, Cricket, for giving us this opportunity. I will send this straight to you, so I need you to, not to Cricket, to RNKS, I don't know whether it's a name or a set of initials, but I need you to just PM me with your postal address, please, and I'm delighted to send this to you, and if you can please answer my questions about how you cope with mirror knitting in a non-mirror knitter's world. I'd be really interested to know. Thank you very, very much, and thank you to Cricket again for that bag. It's beautiful, and thank you for mine as well. So there we are. Let's move on to some. I don't really. Okay, let's do whips to start with. You've already seen a little bit of this sock here. You've seen it before. It's just done with Regia sock yarn, which is 4 Mosaic color. Voorfach haltbaar. It doesn't really have a colorway name on it, I don't think. Effekt musste nicht farbverbindlich. I don't know what that means. No, I don't. It's that colour, right? Anyway, brightly coloured. I thought it was going to be a bit stripier than that, but actually it comes up very, very spotty and speckly. I have said I don't like speckles. I quite like this. I fell out with this sock a little bit last night. I'm using this as my final test sock for writing a recipe for toe-up sock with a German short row, heel flap and gusset. It's the water, I'm so sorry. I haven't had any lunch properly yet. And I don't know if you heard that, there's some gurgling going on here. Which oh, there's more. Oh, there we go, a bit of windy pops. I got as far as halfway up the heel flap, so I'd done the gusset increases, I'd done the heel turn, and I was working on the heel flap, doing the increases up the side, the decreases up the side, and it just wasn't going to be big enough. The sock just wasn't long enough. I don't know what I was thinking. The one thing I haven't yet got my head around is quite how far before I get to the back of my foot I need to go before I start the gusset decreases. There's quite a lot of when you do a cuff down sock, you have a similar sort of thing to know when to start doing the toe, but it's only the toe. When you're doing toe up, doing this way, there's however many gusset decreases you need to get to the right number of stitches, plus the heel turn and the heel flap before you can really find out whether it's the right size or not. It's a lot of knitting, which I then pulled out. And I was so stubborn about things, I didn't like having my wiggly used yarn laughing at me in a pile, so I carried on knitting until I got back to virgin wool. So I'm now halfway up the second set of gusset decreases, and the sock is about 1.5 inches longer. It was a catastrophically badly judged sock. We don't get it right all the time. I think that's the fun of knitting. So here it is anyway, it's looking lovely. But this is the progress mark, this is where I got to, this is where I ripped back to last night. So I did quite a lot of it, and this is one of Joyce's fabulous stitch markers. Rainbow on the back and boy love on the front. Marvellous. Thank you for those, Joyce. I miss you. I'd like to see you podcasting again soon, please. I just seem to have got to all the podcasters that are sort of on my must-haves. There's lots of podcasts that I dip in and out of, but all the ones that I watch regularly all seem to have shut down for a bit and not podcasted for ages. I've even caught up to date with the bakery beds, even though I know they're regular, but I'm up to date with those. And everyone else has either stopped for good, like wonderful Dark Matter Knits, hello Elizabeth, and Amy and Darren as well for Knitting in Circles. They're no longer podcasting, which I think is a real shame. And others as well who just haven't done for a while, and I've caught up, so I miss you all. Please come back. So that's that one. It's a sock, you know. The recipe is coming along. I'm knitting it out of my nice little grey tartan bag from the little grey girl, from Gemma. Thank you very much for that. It was my gift in Edinburgh. And moving on. That's a very dull, boring whip. My other one, there's not. I've got more knitting content, I promise, but I haven't actually touched this one. This is the piano number 3, which is knitted on the bias with cables. I haven't touched it since the last time I spoke to you. I kind of get to the stage where I want to knit it again. So I was thinking about it last night, and I was thinking, well, I had some other knitting I wanted to do. I'm home alone this week. Ben's away for the first week of rehearsals for Brass with the National Youth Music Theatre, which they're performing in London in August. The second of my husband's shows to open in London this year. Very exciting. But so I've had plenty of time this last couple of days to be by myself. I've not been working, so I've been podcasting and knitting, watching podcasts, knitting, tutorials, admin, great. And here it is. I love it. I really do love it. It is quite slow going because the cables are not the most flowy things in the world. There's a lot of stages. They're fun, but they're not quick. So I'm really looking forward to how this is going to shape up. You can see how it's going to shape up. It's going to look like that. It's just going to get longer. It hasn't got longer for a while, but I suspect I'll be back on it probably this evening. And that's knitted with 2 colours of John Dunballen's Cherish base in Van Gogh, say it how you will, and a custom dye black. So that's lovely. It's really nice to knit with. It's got a little touch of cashmere in it. And then you all saw this last time from my other cricket bag. Hello, thank you for that, cricket, again. You all saw me finish that I had finished this, which is knit in the same yarn as Aloysius's jumper. They match beautifully. And this is the hat that didn't have a name. Well, it does now. I gave 2 options in a poll in my group in Ravelry, and out of about 40 or 50 votes, the clear winner is Dan the Plughole. So named after Dan, who I'm going to be giving this to, after Dan Jones. Dan the Plughole, this will be coming your way, and it's a lot of fun. I do like it. I like the spirals on it. It's hard to tell with the light flaring this way. Right? It spirals all the way around the hat, and the crown looks like that. Gosh, you probably can't see that at all. The crown is a proper spiral, and it's done with like lines of yarn overs and decreases and patches of 2x2 rib, no 2x1 rib and reverse stocking stitch. That's that. You've seen that already, but I wanted to bring it out because of the new name. So I'll be writing this pattern up because I had a lot of interest from people on Instagram, from people who wanted to get their hands on it. You'll be able to fairly soon. It won't take long to do it. I just need to get some photographs and spend the time doing it. And maybe I'll do this week or next week. So I'm hoping it'll be out before too much longer. But you also saw that I was knitting a second sample out of Cascade 220 for my nephew. Well, it's finished, and here it is also in my Cricket 70s bag, and here it is. It's also blue. He wanted Twitter logo blue. I think that's not far off, and it's, do you know, it kind of looks like the Gherkin. The famous building in London. Maybe I should have named it after that. It's, interestingly, these hats are not the same. I know the yarn is not the same, but these hats are really not the same. One of them is quite significantly longer than the other. You can see I'm holding them together at the top, but the dark blue one is a good inch longer, and feels not as loose. It's the same needles, it's the same knitter, and this yarn is admittedly slightly thicker. I would have assumed that would get bigger, but no. It feels tighter. Maybe it's not quite as much give in it, but it's kind of longer. So I'm hoping that my nephew will enjoy wearing it with a proper slouch, because even with the brim turned up, there's a lot of length in it. I know Dan will hate it, because he hates a slouchy hat. But that's the hat. I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. I don't wear hats up on the top of my head like this, but I know a lot of people do. I tend to wear a hat like that, and it's still got enough to go slouchy at the back, or just to sort of wear kind of all ruched up like that. I like this hat a lot. Dan the Plughole it is. So my nephew Lewis will be getting this from me. It's interesting. I was really nervous of knitting for Lewis when I did his scarf for Christmas, because he's 17 and he's 6'5", he's ridiculously tall, and he's a young man, and having his gay uncle knitting for him might not have been the kind of thing that he was knitting. It's not about his gay uncle, it's about knitting. It's a bit girly. It's not me talking, this is a 17-year-old boy. However, he loves the scarf I made for him for Christmas. It's the spiraling on that. It's come out really nicely. And he was the first person on the Instagram feed about Dan's hat to say, I want one. It's like, well, great. I'm not going to say no to the opportunity of knitting for somebody who genuinely wants something knitted for them. And he chose the colour, and there it is. I mean, folded in half of that, it really does look like the Gherkin. No, it's Dan the Plughole. It's Dan the Plughole. So that's an FO. I've done all my whips, haven't I? I've moved on seamlessly into FOs without even noticing it. Now you may remember, which way around to talk about this? Okay, yes, you may remember when I was up in Edinburgh, I mentioned that I met the fabulous Nancy Marchant, who is Mrs. Brioche. She's the Queen of Brioche, although she has said she now calls herself the Queen Mother of Brioche, and she's passed on the crown to Stephen West as the King of Brioche. But Brioche is a type of tuck stitch. Tuck stitch just means that some layers of yarn are tucked up into rows above them, and she was teaching a class on tuck stitches and making things with tuck stitches and lots of different stitch patterns that she's come up with in the tuck vein. Still got a rough thing on my lip. And while we were chatting, she said, wait right there. She ran off and she came back with this, which she gave to me, and I was delighted to receive, which is the worksheets that she was using for her classes while she was there. And it's really, really interesting. There's all sorts of stuff and lots of different types of tuck stitch shown from the front and the back. Mostly done with two colours. Are they all done with two colours? Or just... Yeah, they seem to be. Now I read through this and went crazy for one of the particular stitches, which she calls the lowest fantasy brioche stitch in the round. Now, it looks like, I don't want to give too much away, because this is Nancy stuff, but it looks like that. That's alright, it's kind of stripy, kind of textured. What it looks like on the back, I really liked. On the back, it looks like that. I loved it. So, I was thinking, well, I don't want it to look like that on the back, I want it to look like that on the front. And with two of the skeins of yarn that I bought in Edinburgh, the two knit by numbers, the John Arbonne knit by numbers, the brown and the maroon that you'll remember seeing from last time, I decided that I was going to knit myself a cowl, and I wanted to reverse the stitch that Nancy had put there. So wherever she was knitting, I was purling, wherever she was brioche knitting, I was brioche purling, and vice versa. And I'm really, really happy with the results. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, with a gentle reversing of the stripes in the middle. But this is, it's going to become the portcullis cowl, and it's called a portcullis because I think the stitch reminds me of a portcullis. You really get the joy of it when you open it up, and you can see that in the brown there's all these sort of red stripes in the background, and in the red area there's these brown stripes in the background. And the size of these tucked stitches, because they're built up over 3 separate rounds. I'm not going to go into exactly the mechanics of how it's done, but it's got a little garter stitch border in 2 colours. It's just really, really nice. And I'm going to knit myself another one because I want to do one in colours that are a little bit more contrasty than this. I love the fact that these two go together. I mean, you can wear this in all sorts of ways. You can wear it as pretty much as a hood. If I'd made it a little bit longer, it would reach down to the back. But you could, if you were going out in the cold, you wear that around there, and then a scarf around the back. You'd be nice and toasty cozy. Or you can wear it rolled inside or outside and get this kind of roll neck texture, which I love. Because then you do get to see what it looks like on the inside, that's Nancy's lowest fantasy brioche, but on my outside it's that. What's interesting is there's no difference on the inside at all. Can you see the stripes just keep alternating? You cannot see what's going on the front, which is where we've got this banding with a contrast band in the middle across there. I love it, and I think, oh, it's just so gorgeous and squishy, and if you fold it in half, you can just, it's so thick. It's so gorgeous. The bloom on John Arbonne is really, really nice. If you don't like fuzzy yarn, it's not for you, but this one, it blooms really, really nicely. It's very evenly as well. It feels so soft and so warm. I'm going to do another one in John Arbonne again. I'm going to do it with the 2 colours that I made my piano number 1 scarf out of, the dark grey and the vibrant turquoise. Maybe violent is the right word for it. Annoyingly, my phone just stopped videoing. I think I just ran out of space, and I'm trying to free things up on it, but Whether or not I've managed to do that, I don't know. It's still showing I've got nothing left on it. Anyway, I was talking about this fabulous portcullis cowl and how much I enjoyed making it. It was really, really quick. I did it in a couple of evenings, maybe 3 sessions, I think, of a few hours each. A couple of hours each, so maybe 6-7 hours work in there. It flew off the needles. It was lovely fun to do. It's really, the stitch is so easy. It's basically a 3-row repeat of 2 stitches per row. I mean, that's it. It's so lovely, but the effect I think is mesmerizing. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. So thank you, Nancy, for introducing me to this. I'm going to have some fun, I think, with some tuck stitches. And I showed a photograph of the texture of this on Instagram, and Nancy commented just saying, "Tuck those stitches," which I really had to think about saying then, because it made me laugh so much, because I know how to rhyme. And I suddenly had images of Nancy Marchant, brioche knitter extraordinaire, as some kind of gangster rapper saying some dreadful, dreadful things that rhyme with "tuck those stitches." You know me. So this is the portcullis cowl. I'm actually really looking forward to casting on a second one. That never happens. If I have to do a second sample for something, it's usually with a sense of dread, but this is going to be just a joy, and I can't wait. I think this is going back to what I was saying earlier about wanting to be able to do patterns, my brain wanting to do shorter knits, and I think I like being able to rattle something off the needles, and it's fun, and it's quick, and it's satisfying, because you do get to see that product quite quickly. It happened again. It turns out you don't just delete things from the phone, you have to delete them from the recently deleted items album as well. I learn these things. So, I don't know where I was just saying how much I'm loving doing little knits, and I'm going to be playing a lot more with the tuck stitches, so watch this space for that kind of thing. Now, interestingly, one thing sometimes leads to another. I liked the colours on this so much that it didn't use up very much. This I bought 2 100-gram skeins, one of the brown and one of the maroon, and the cowl itself only weighs about 90 grams. I mean, it's quite a substantial item. It's not a tiny cowl by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, gosh, having worn it now, I don't want to take it off. I made my neck feel cold when I took it off. There we are. Having knitted it and had quite a lot of stuff left over, I wanted to see what I could do with it. Now, you may remember that I've been doing a little bit of spinning. My friend Hilary and her son Jago gave me a bag of sheep's fleece bits that they'd collected from a field, and I just went on a little bit of a mission to turn it into yarn. Well, if you've been following my Instagram feed, you'll see the photographs, which I'll put in here, of the process of how I've done it. So I washed it, I spun it, I carded it to start with, washed it, carded it, spun it, and I left it on the spindle for quite some time. So I wanted to, I tend to spin quite thick and thin, obviously because I'm a novice spinner, but mostly thin, and I over twist stuff. So the yarn was very active, which means that turn that off. Which means that it wants to twist up on itself all the time. So I wanted to set the twist. So yesterday, one of my other things to do with my knitting admin was to wind it off the spinner, wind it onto a version of a niddy noddy. Now I used an old plastic lid, which is about sort of that big, so I was getting a skein about that long, and someone on Instagram said it's a liddy noddy, which I'm totally stealing. So I gave it a hot bath, left it to soak, and then prized it off of that. Obviously I tied it up, learned how to do the figure of 8 knots that you see in commercial skeins, and then I hung it up to dry. I gave it a bit of a thwack on the carpet. Now some people, interestingly, I don't know much about the whole spinning thing and yarn care, so I learnt what I've learnt from watching YouTube videos, and people sort of give it a bit of a thwack to sort of help reduce some of the twist. That's what I wanted to do. But some people are saying it's going to felt too much. I kind of wanted it to felt a little bit because I felt that it would help it to the two plies to stay together. Because I have plied it. It's not a single. It's 2-ply, and I like it. I think it's come out rather well. This is what I've got left. I actually have used it. Last night I spent time knitting with it. Just have a bit of accent. And the yarn, the fibre was so tatty. So it's lumpy bumpy, but I'm hoping that that's mostly... Oh, that's really not going to focus, is it? Well, maybe. That's mostly the yarn, the fibres itself. There are long periods where it's quite a consistent... and you just get a bulge, and the bulge is not really like a bulge of fat fibre, it's just a lump literally in the fibre itself. So look at that. It's not bad. It's quite thin for a 2-ply. I know that spinning thin is a bit of a holy grail, and I tend to do it by default. I think my problem is going to be learning how to spin fatter yarn. Anyway, I got about 20 grams of yarn, and there's about 9. So what have I done with the other 11? Well, I wanted to knit a hat with some stranding, because stranding is going to be, obviously, as we spoke about last time, my project is to I can't get my words. My project is to learn to be a better stranded knitter. I've got a feral tank top that I want to attack, and I want to get quite good at it. So I thought I want to knit a gift for Hilary as a thank you for giving me the yarn. It's lovely. I hadn't asked her to do it. She collected it one day, and then the next time she saw me, she gave me this big bag of stuff. So I thought, well, I'll use up the maroon of this, because there's less maroon in here than there is brown. So I had more maroon left. I didn't get it quite right, but I thought I could then use as an accent to do some little feral bits. Well, not feral, but stranded bits. So I looked online for some traditional. I didn't want to go to the trouble of designing my own. I wanted to do something that looked kind of traditional and recognisable. But I wasn't moved by all the snowflakes and stars and all that kind of stuff that you get with a lot of stranded work. Then I came across a chart with sort of like little waves and scrolls, and it kind of looks floral, and I thought that's really nice. It's a bit Art Deco, and reminded me a bit of my W12AQT scarf, which is all that kind of scrolling leaf work. So I couldn't find the chart, but I sort of copied what I could see of it and tidied up the chart and added some borders and stuff. And I'm really, really happy with the results. It was quite addictive last night. I sat down and I didn't go to bed till about 2, so I wanted to finish it. Didn't quite finish the hat, but I wanted to finish the stranded part of it. I now have finished the hat, and here it is. So as you can see, the contrast of the two colours, the maroon and the cream, is really, really nice. I love it, and it just works all the way round. If I stretch it out there, you can see the texture of the hand spun is not quite the same as the beautifully milled knit by numbers, which is very even and fabulous at the top. But it does the job, and I'm really, really very pleased with it. There's a couple of stitches there, like that one there, which are kind of a little bit tiny and disappearing inside themselves a bit. But other than that, it's not too bad. Now, what you never see is the inside, but my floats, which normally are really sort of tight and puckered, don't look too shabby at all, bearing in mind that there's a lot of lumpy bumpy in the hand spun. But I'm really very, very happy with that. As a I'm not an expert, you can almost see the pattern on the reverse, which I quite like. Yeah, I'm not an expert strander at all, but I think I could get into it. Now, I ran out. I deliberately wanted to do a big brim on this hat because I thought it would be nice to sort of fold it up and have it like that. But so I didn't want it to be too narrow when I folded it. So I did 30 rounds. I could probably, if I'd done 25, it wouldn't have made much difference and I'd have been able to finish the hat. But it's very generous and very roomy, so you can wear it with a bit of slouchy again, or you can fold up the brim and wear it like that. And I have to say, I'm rather pleased with it. I love the contrast of the two colours together. This is my favourite rib for a brim. It's a 2x1 rib, so when you see it folded up, you actually get the one knit stitch columns, which I'm very big fan of. And I'm considering, because of obviously it's got the brown crown edge to it there, I might use some of the brown that's left to give it a brown pom-pom. I don't know. It's for a girl. Maybe I'll give it to her and see if she wants pom-pom or not. It's just very, very standard 8-section spiral decrease. Nothing fancy going on there at all. But yeah, it's nice. And because I like the chart so much, I might release it as a pattern. Not really very summery, not really very spring-like, but we go camping with Hilary and her son every year. We go on holiday, and we're doing that up in the north of England. And it can get quite cold in the north of England, even in summer. So I'll probably save it and give it to her then, and she can wear it if it gets too chilly. It's probably going to drown her. It is a large hat, but I wanted it to be sort of generously proportioned. And one of the things that I am noticing about this, because it was all the scrag ends of stuff that fell off the sheep, it's very sheddy, the white yarn, and it has all these sort of really rough guard hairs that are dry and nasty, so I'm picking those out wherever I can find them. So it's going to be all over my carpet for the next few months, because I don't hoover very often. And I love it. I'm really, really very happy. I enjoyed the stranding process. I thought I'd probably try a little exercise to see if I could work my tension and get that really going very well. So I started off, put that there so you can admire it while I chat. I started off with trying it with both the yarns continental. I wasn't getting on terribly well with that, so I went back to what I'm comfortable with one yarn in each hand, and yeah, I'm pleased with the results. It's heartening. It's made me realise that perhaps stranding is not beyond my capabilities. Of course I can do it. I want to do it really, really well. And I've struggled in the past with getting my tension right. It's either if the floats on the back are loose enough, then all the stitches are loose and floppy on the front, or if the stitches are nice and tidy on the front, because my floats are too tight and it puckers. So this is literally just off the needles. I finished knitting this, I watched everyone's videos, and then I started recording. So it hasn't had a wash or a soak or a block. So that is genuinely straight off the needles, and I don't think that's too bad. I don't think that's too bad at all. So I call that a result. Marvellous. And that's basically all I've been doing. So I've got this left, so I might be able to put that into a slightly smaller hat, because that was 11 grams that went into that, and there's 9 grams left. But I'll certainly keep hold of that. It does smell quite nice. And it's nice, I like it. Someone asked me if I'm falling down the spinning rabbit hole. I don't think I am. I really don't think I am. I know famous last words and all that, but I don't think that's going to be a massive part of what I do. I think it's something I'll enjoy. Sorry, clip fingers. I'll enjoy dipping into that every now and then and having some fun with it. I do have 0.5 kilogram of alpaca fibre, which I'm quite keen to have a go at, but I think I probably want to get a bit better at consistency then, and maybe knit something more substantial with that. So that'd be quite fun. Other than that, I have nothing more to share with you, but this is a long one again, so I'm not going to do grammar rants or what's tat this time. I'm just going to let this one go. So although this I mess it up every time. Although this podcast episode is now a finished object, remember, life is a work in progress. Just take it one stitch at a time. See you next time. Happy knitting, and bye bye.